What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Martin, thanks for coming back. I want to jump right into what's happening in the precious metal space, and what are your observations on what's going on in the gold market and the silver markets?
Well, I think we're looking at silver's in backwardation, meaning that the spot price is higher than the futures price. So that's showing like a near-term shortage in physical silver for delivery. In gold, we've had our projected resistance max for October at the 4,500 level, and we got to get through that before you're going to see anything really blowing off to the upside. But there is a risk of a temporary high here in October, a pullback. What you have to understand is that all this talk of peace, etc., Middle East, etc., if you remove the geopolitical risk, that's what's been pushing gold and silver up. And so, that's a factor you have to pay attention to. The other issue is Europe. Europe is in absolute dire straits. And they're pushing for their CBDC. And what they intend to do is cancel the physical currency, forcing everybody into electronic. And they've already just started phase one. You can Google it and look it up. If you're coming in or leaving, you must report all your accounts. And so it's for Europe. It's no longer this. You have $10,000 in cash or more. It's like you have $10,000 in life or more. And the rumblings are that they will probably put in very stiff capital controls, and that will include preventing people from moving anything out, including gold. There's the possibility of them actually clamping down on Bitcoin. You have to understand what their objective is to prevent any capital outflow. And they know what Bitcoin is probably the greatest money laundering instrument ever. I mean, you can buy it in Germany and you can then sell it in New York, and you got your money out and didn't go through a central bank. I mean, that's what gave it the volume coming out of China. And then the Chinese central bank figured it out and called in all the Bitcoin guys. So this is where we're going with Europe. We've already had, the two finance ministers of UK and France hint that they may need an IMF bailout. But read between the lines. What does that say? It says, effectively, they're having trouble selling debt. And what these morons don't get is they keep talking about war with Russia all the time. Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, then why would I want to buy your debt? It's if you lose the war, it's worthless, like Confederate bonds. So you can't constantly be bashing Putin and then say, "Hey, you want to buy some of my debt?" It just doesn't work that way. So, the U.S. was able to do that with victory bonds and stuff like that because there was no perception of the United States being invaded. It would have across the Atlantic, etc. I mean, nobody saw that as even remotely possible. But the European debt, they defaulted in 1931, and even Britain defaulted, and the entire British Commonwealth. So Canada defaulted also in 1931, and this is what people don't understand: the difference between a Great Depression and a recession. A recession may be more confined to a stock market decline. It doesn't impact everybody. Okay? But you take down the debt market, and what happens is you basically undermine pension funds, everything, government. What made the 07 to 09 the Great Recession.
This episode is brought to you by McElvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcelvaney.com/coffeeandamike.
It was mortgage-backed securities collapsed. The two worst things economically are the sovereign debt markets and real estate, because that impacts everybody. Okay, if you're just talking about the AI stocks, it's the people that are invested in that. It's not everybody. Okay, and so that's the primary difference economically between a depression versus a recession. And like I said, what made the Great Depression so great was Europe all defaulted, including Britain and the British Commonwealth. Goldman Sachs in particular was selling foreign bonds to Americans in small denominations. And they were buying them because, they're getting 8% interest, 2% more in the U.S. or whatever. And it was sold that way to moms and pops. So when Europe went bust, you hit everybody. And then that brought down 9,000 banks. The stock market goes down, doesn't bring down 9,000 banks. But people's savings and stuff are wiped out. So you have to keep that in mind, and that's where we are with Europe right now. And that has put in the bid economically, also behind the precious metals and even the U.S. stock market. Most of our big institutions that had large gold holdings in Europe over the past year, I said, you better get it the hell out. Because once that first bullet is shot, they're putting in capital controls like they have always done. And from a European perspective, I warned them that if they do the same thing with capital controls that they've done before, you won't be able to buy or sell physical gold. So you're not going to be able to even move it. And Italy, if it looks like you have too much gold jewelry on, they take it off and they weigh it. You know, Spain, you can't take out more than 3,000 euros out of your account without government permission. So when you stand back and look at this collectively from Europe, it's a basket case. They need this war to cover up basically their economic failures. And structurally, as you know, when they were creating the euro, they called me in for that too. And I sat down, this is how we create a currency. You got to consolidate all the debts. And as I've said before, Helmut Kohl was the Chancellor of Germany, wouldn't allow that to happen. And I warned them in 98. I said, this is going to be a disaster. The euro cannot possibly survive this. Why? In 2010, we saw Greece needing an IMF bailout. And I'm a trader. I'm not an academic. All right. What happened? The traders, you just make a lot of money shorting, Greece. Who's next? Oh, Spain. It turns into a contagion. And I suggest reading Herbert Hoover's memoirs. They're free online, 1931. He explains the same thing. He says, as one country defaults, everybody looked, who's next? He said, capital acted like a loose cannon on the deck of a ship in the middle of like a hurricane, shooting off in every which direction so fast they couldn't figure out where it was going next. That's what you will see in Europe. Now, because they did not consolidate the debt, each bank, all right, its reserves are made up of a cornucopia of the debts of all these countries. So what happened in 2010? Traders going to look at the banks. Oh, who has the most Greek debt? Short that bank. Now we're talking about not Greece. We're talking about France, the second largest economy in the EU. And France is tottering on the edge. All right. And rumors are they have a little over 70 billion of frozen Russian assets, and they're dipping into that. These people want war with Russia, so you got the Euroclear has about 330 billion in Russian debt. Then they get to keep it. This is just grand larceny. And they will do whatever they need to do to retain power. That's what this is about. So, this is, the smart money in Europe. This is also why the metal's been pushed up. So I would be concerned you could see the metals back down initially if they put in these types of capital controls that you can't even buy or sell or move gold out of Europe. So pay attention to that risk. That's the one risk I would say is on the downside, for the downside. On the upside, look, I do not see Hamas basically really relenting to all this peace deal. Look, that's kind of like Lindsey Graham going over and shaking hands with Putin and say, oh, well, let's, do a free trade deal.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. We worked it out.
Yeah, not going to happen. Hamas is the same thing. These people, as I've said before, I've gone to dinner with some of these neocons, and I can't explain it other than they hated Russians because they were communists. And when Gorbachev stood up and Reagan wanted to go meet him, I was there in D.C. and they couldn't call him a communist anymore. So they just said you can never trust a Russian. So Hamas is the same way. They're just not, I don't see them suddenly saying, oh, gee, we've been wrong for 50 years. Everything will be nice and fine. But I think that, they will retain their weapons, and I don't think they're going to really surrender everything. And Iran, it's the same thing. I mean, you're talking about a religious dispute. This is not economic. This is like, all right, fine, I'll give you this piece of ground, you give me that. All right? This is my God against your God. How do you resolve something like that? And it's the same thing in the Balkans. Bismarck, even in 1888, warned that there was going to be a major war in Europe and it's going to come from the Balkans. The hatred there between these different ethnic classes it's systemic. I mean, it's inherent. I had, employee in Kiev and one in Donetsk, one on each side. One in Donetsk did all the translation for the movie people, so the forecaster could be shown in Russia. And she translated the whole thing into Russian. The two of them would never talk to each other. And as I've said before, we had a conference in Athens, and the one from Kiev refused to fly back the quickest way because the plane just stopped in Moscow. I mean, you're going to be there, less than an hour. Nope. I mean, you can't explain it. The hatred there is just, they're taught that in school. And I tried saying, listen, do you realize you just hate Russians? Stalin was not even a Russian. He was from Georgia. Okay, the guy that they put in charge of stealing all the food from Ukraine was a Ukrainian. Kaganovich, he was Stalin's right-hand man. And even Khrushchev came from the border area there by Ukraine. His successor, Brezhnev, was born in the Donbass. And so one of the debates in Moscow has long been, who's really Russian? It's a fair question. I mean, Russia was a very big empire, but it also included Georgia, all these other places as well. So ethnically, people that were in government were not just simply Russians.
I want to go back a second and talk about silver and backwardation. What is fueling this then, and where do you see that going? Because it appears, and maybe I'm explaining this wrong, but London is short silver, so there's more. If they're calling for the physical silver, there's not enough of it. There's more of it on paper than the actual physical part of it.
Right.
So what is causing that?
Mostly because the refineries are all backed up. they were focusing on gold. Um, it's not that there's a permanent shortage per se that's going to last for decades or something like that. Um, Silver is going into backwardation many times. It tends to be more of uh, a retail market per se than gold. This gold's more expensive, so somebody can buy 10 ounces of silver versus 1 ounce of gold. you know, um, uh, but I mean that's what this the backwardation is really all about. That they've been um, you see, I mean, commodities have often gone through this sort of thing, and it's largely because of uh, manipulations. Honestly, the whole, I got in the middle of the controversy with the Buffett silver deals back in the late '90s, and that was the same thing. They were buying the gold or the silver in New York, moving it to London, and that created the image that there's a shortage of gold. You just move the inventories around, and if you move it to a place that doesn't report, hey, look at the shortage. I mean, it's gone up. It's just one of the tricks of the commodity game, from the '70s, honestly. Fibro, had was part of Engelhart. I knew those guys. We had to deal with them. I did a lot of refining back then, and they made so much money on the 1980 rally that they bought Salomon Brothers, which was the biggest bond house in Wall Street. Then what happened? They took the commodity manipulation schemes to Wall Street, and they got caught. And that was the Salomon Brothers. They got caught manipulating U.S. Treasury auctions. I mean, putting in fake bids, pretending there's more bids than there's not, etc. The Treasury was going to shut them down. That's when Warren Buffett steps in. Oh, it becomes the white knight. I'll take care of it. I'll become chairman. Don't close it down. But look, you can look at the, Fibro had bought Salomon Brothers, and all of a sudden Warren Buffett gets involved in buying silver. It's all the same game all the time. It's not some conspiracy theory. I mean, I've been in the middle of it. So I've seen it from every which side from Sunday, but I still think you're going to see increased warfare. May back off a little bit here, but people will think, okay, there's peace in the Middle East. It's just not going to last. So I would expect things to start heating up again probably after December.
Do you think so? So with silver and backwardation, you don't think this is going to last very long, and it'll kind of self-correct, or do you see that still going up?
No, I think you're looking at the risk of a high in the metals here in October. And so I would be careful, starting the week of basically October 27th. If there's going to be a pullback, it probably would be into November. If October just produces the highest monthly close and you get the intraday high in November, then you're going to see more of a pronounced decline. But like I say, most of their perception will be on the geopolitical side. Back in 1980, gold had rallied from 100 to 400 by December '79. It went from 400 to 875 in the last 6 weeks. Why? That's when Russia invaded Afghanistan. So it's always the geopolitical crisis that puts the biggest bid to the precious metals. It's not inflation or something like that. Um, and I mean, if you look at it, you know, look, the gold only crowd likes to say it's inflation. You know, the national debt hit $1 trillion in 1980. Gold hit 875. Okay. Um, you know, in theory, then, if gold just kept pace with the money supply, it shouldn't be, $5,000. It should be $35,000. Let's separate, the BS from reality here. And we still see the major initial resistance to any really blow off to the upside is at 4,500. You've got to get through that to test the $5,000. Precious metals, as with many other things, people tend to look psychologically at whole numbers. So we've had our forecast for a long time, that gold would eventually test the 5,000 level. You get through that, then you're going to see it's going to jump. And then everybody will say, now 10,000. They always move it from one psychological number to the next. And once it got through 100, we're going to 200. Got through 200, now we're going to 500. Got through 5, we're going to 1,000. Stops at 875. This is basically just the way markets trade in general. We'll do it with the Dow as well. Just look at those. If you step back and you look at it, you'll see they love these psychological numbers. I mean, the Dow had a big resistance level at the 1,000 level from 1966, then tested again 68, then 70, and then 74, and finally it breaks out. But couldn't get through that 1,000 number for a long time.
So you see, if I'm understanding you correctly, there could be a pullback in the metals middle of October, or in the middle of October, end of October, November, but then do you think that'll be short-lived and it'll start to climb again?
Yeah, we still see war next year. What I've explained to our European clients, that if we look at history for a guideline here, they could clamp down and prevent people from buying or selling physical gold in Europe. What would happen then is, I've suggested that they look at gold stocks in the United States. And I suspect this is what they are just putting out, where you have to explain all your accounts coming in and out. Oh yeah, how much you got? Where's it at? This is what is often highly dangerous. And Elizabeth Warren was pushing for this. They call it a wealth tax. A bunch of clients wanted me to go in on a Swiss bank, and fine, I met with them, and to even get involved in buying into a bank required a wealth tax. And so, oh, it's nothing. It's only a quarter, 1%. Well, if it's nothing, then why are you even asking for it? Wealth tax would have meant that I had to reveal every account in the entire world to them. You know, and then I said, who are you going to sell that information to? No thanks. So I backed out. But that's what a wealth tax is, and that's Europe. So doing this at the border is not even a wealth tax. Now they just want you to disclose everything. If you're going to leave, will they restrain you? It's going to be interesting. Should point out that during the hyperinflation of Germany, the Germans, because there was a revolution in 1918, and the socialists in Germany were even inviting Russia to come take Germany. They wanted to join this Marxist utopia. So anybody with any money got it the hell out. That's why there was hyperinflation. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, he passed a law making it illegal for a German to even have an account outside of Germany. He was trying to bring all that money back. That's when, in 1934, the Swiss created the numbered secret account, no names, to protect the Germans and hopefully to prevent a major capital outflow. So, they follow the same pattern all the time. You get into war, and this reporting now, which is just started, I think it was as of Monday this week, it was simply, it's over the top. This is what Hitler did. But now it's just reporting. So what are you going to do? You know what I mean? It's just, they're closing in. And so those are the risks that I see for the metals and the markets as we move forward. The smart money in Europe better get the hell out before they can't get out. So a lot of them have been using the Bitcoin. They buy it there, they sell it here, and they got the cash here, and then they deposit into whatever they want. You can do that with Bitcoin. In theory, you can do it with gold, but you would physically have to move it. You can buy it there and sell it in New York. It's the same instrument. That's the key. So that doesn't even necessarily work with stocks. So that's been the real bid behind Bitcoin. It's been the electronic version of money laundering. Canadians are using it. Chinese used it. Europeans are doing it. That's basically what the bid is. It's been a great instrument for that, but just be aware the governments also know that. It's not a secret.
Yeah, this is. And you and I have talked about Bitcoin before and the whole crypto, the crypto industry. I can't believe that if the government doesn't want to come in and either stop it or bring their own or crush, dismantle Bitcoin, they have the power to do that. But every Bitcoin person I talk to says, no, it's decentralized.
Really? I just did a post. They're confiscating it in criminal cases. 240 million they confiscated from one guy. They have the power to simply do what Hitler did. Or what, it's illegal to have an account outside the country. You got Europe. You must disclose every account to even get out. I don't know what these people think. Oh, it's decentralized, like it's some immunity or what?
Well, do they think because they're in El Salvador or Argentina that they can't get touched? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I mean, they can seize anything they want. These countries. Do you realize where this? All right, they removed Russia from SWIFT, and that created, BRICS, etc., and divided the world economy. But where did it start? It started with Christine Lagarde when she was the head of the IMF. Look it up. What did she do? She was going to all the tax havens. We will remove you from SWIFT unless you turn over all the names of foreigners who have accounts in your country. All right. They were all giving them up. We cut them off of SWIFT. They can't get any money in and they can't get any money out. You really think El Salvador is going to, tank the whole country to save a few Bitcoin people? It's never happened. She even went after the Vatican and said, we want to know everybody that donates any money to the Vatican. She's the one that started this stuff. Then they paid bribes to people in Swiss banks to give up the German names. Paid bribes. I think one guy was prosecuted. You're offering them, all right, I'll give you $3 million. I'll give you a percentage of how many millions we find. It's it decentralized. That's just another piece of propaganda. Good luck with that one. If they want it, they got the guns, they got the pen for the power, and they can do it.
And then they have the ability to just, because it's all tied through, electricity anyway. They have the ability, in my view, they can stop at any given point by just doing a kill switch. I mean, look what happened on the Robinhood app when they were what was that stock that they were chasing up? They were driving up the price of it. AMC and I can't think of the name of it now. But they were driving up the price of it, and then Robinhood put you couldn't buy it anymore. You could only sell it. And just killed all the momentum. It was AMC, and then what was the other? Oh, GameStop.
Yeah, look, they did that in gold and silver back in 1980. All right. The Hunt brothers were clients. I knew that they were back in the early period. We were buying the silver certificates, submitting them to the Treasury, and getting silver, redeeming the silver from the Treasury, and putting them on basically armored cars, and they were going down to Nelson Bunker Hunt. I mean, I knew along, I'd say at least 5-6 years in advance in 1980. They were gold bugs. He thought he was going to take silver up dramatically. He was buying it from $1.29. Towards the end, suddenly everybody heard the name Hunt. How? Because the people who wanted to short against it put the name out to get all the retail people buying. Oh, silver's going to go to 100. That's what they made them think. And then they sold it all. And then the exchange, to make sure that happened, okay, they changed the margin requirements. All right, it was like 50 grand to be long, but like 5 grand to be short. It's all rigged all the time. You pay these people enough, that's it. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a big risk. It's not going to 100. So let's make it $50,000 this way and $5,000 the other way. I mean, routinely will manipulate these sorts of things. So wake up. I mean, oh, it's decentralized. Yeah, good luck. Okay. Europe routinely cancels their currency. If you got paper currency, even from Britain with the Queen's picture, not good anymore. They cancel it. Why? Because let's say you had $500,000 in cash you've been saving and sticking in your safety deposit box. Now they cancel the paper currency. What happens? Okay, we exchange it for the new one. You got to take that 500 grand, go to the bank and say, oh, where'd you get this? Did you pay taxes? That's what this is all about. Europe is the perfect Marxist utopia. The government needs to know absolutely everything. It's what free speech is dead. I was asked would I come over to Britain for meetings. I said, sorry. I told you I was there in May of 24. I said, this will probably be the last time I ever see Britain. Starmer would lock me up for something I said 10 years ago. Forget it. Not interested.
Do you see capital controls being implemented in the United States?
There'll be people that try, but as long as Trump is there, I don't think so. Look, I have put on the block. I should explain. Look, I started in this business. Unintentionally. So I often call myself the accidental economist. All right. I happen to have had a client in 1973, Walter Zengler, who was a chief executive VP at Franklin National Bank. Franklin National Bank was the first bank that failed after the fall of Bretton Woods on floating exchange rate due to foreign currency exposure. They didn't teach this stuff in school. All they taught was still Keynesian economics, fixed rates, etc. All right, Bretton Woods collapsed, and it began in 1971 in August. So there was nobody with any experience in this stuff. I had at least gone to Europe with my family back in '64. We traveled Europe, from basically everywhere from Sweden down to Italy, whatever, for the summer, driving around. And so that introduced me to currency. Every time we crossed the border, how to change currency, etc. So I understood that. So in '73, Franklin National Bank was the first bank failure due to foreign exchange. It was about a 10% move in the Italian lira that took the bank down. It was one of the 20th, I believe it was the 20th largest bank in the U.S. at the time. They're the ones that started MasterCard. So Walter knew that I understood currencies. They just started trading in futures in '72. So we're into this maybe a year. And he says, would you come take a look at this? I think it's something you understand. I think it has something to do with currency. I mean, nobody even understood hedging back then. All right. So the bank failed on that. Ever since that time, when there was a currency crisis, I got called in. So when they're forming the G5 in '85, I'm called in. '87, stock market crash, I'm called in by the Presidential Commission. every so I had the experience of a trader, but I had also served on boards for banks. So I understood banking. So every time there was a banking issue, I get called in. So I was called in by the House Banking Committee for '07 to '09. Why? Because I'm on the I have the same experience as them, but I'm on the opposite side of the table. And I see the same thing happening now in geopolitics. I've been called in um, for a debriefing on the Russian problem tomorrow.
So today, just so
very much
so people, not to cut you off, so people tomorrow. So today's date is October 14th. So you'll be there on the 15th.
Yeah. So the fact that I'm even getting called in, I see it as the same thing where I was always on the opposite side of the bankers, and now I'm on the opposite side of the neocons. They know I know them. I've been to dinner with these people. So I've argued back and forth. Bill Crystal, whose father even started the neocon movement, spoke at one of our conferences. So I'm not conspiracy theory. I've been there, done that.
What's it like when you get a call, Martin, when they call? I don't know what you can share, but you get that call and they say, Martin, I need you here.
Pretty much, yeah. It's look, they just know what my experience is. So they don't want. They also know that I developed the first really artificial intelligence computer that monitored the entire world, and so it wasn't my opinion. We all have opinions. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's the biggest problem with opinion is you may not have all the facts going on at one time. And so the computer really crunches down everything. It's looking globally. I can tell you one early incident. I think it was around 1983. I was on Financial News Network, which then was bought and became CNBC. And I was on a show there with Walter Bresser. And I gave the computer forecast. I said, look, the British pound is going to fall to par by 85. The pound was trading around 240. And I said, Britain will flip and realign more with Canada and the United States than Europe. That was a pretty shocking forecast. And he turns to Walt and he goes, what do you think of that forecast? Walt says, if I were you, I wouldn't bet against his computer. I had developed what is called a natural language interface, so I could talk to it. How are you coming up with this? And the reason I tell this story because it was the first time it really impressed me. North Sea oil had just been discovered in 1977. Okay, so you're talking basically 5 to 6 years. Britain has suddenly become an energy producer instead of a consumer. And the computer was picking that up. It was picking up and then saying it is going to realign with the United States and Canada against Europe. And when I asked it, how are you coming up with this? Because this is, crazy, I thought. And then it points to North Sea oil. Then when you look at it, you go, oh shit, it's right. I should have thought about that. It's looking at things that we forget or don't pay attention to. So it's had a phenomenal forecasting record. Even in the movie The Forecaster in 2011, I stood up, they filmed that. I said, our worst cycle turns up in 2014. I put it out on the blog. In 2013, I said, the computer's targeting Ukraine. There have been multiple wars fought over Crimea. Going back to ancient Roman times. It's a very strategically important area. Even the Black Plague came from there. It was the Tartars who invaded Ukraine. They destroyed Kiev in the year 1240. That's why 15% of the population of Crimea are still Tartars from the Mongol invasion of 1240. They stayed. All right. So the computer has every database imaginable. You can go on our site and even Google it, and you'll see it has daily temperatures from New York Central Park back into the 1890s or 1860s, actually. It shows there's no global warming. You put all the stuff out. It looks at the numbers. It's not opinions.
What concerns you more than right now in terms of war? Middle East or Russia, Europe?
I'm still more concerned about, I would say, Russia. And what I have pointed out, and this may be one of the reasons I'm being called in, I don't know, but Russia has been effectively attacked by the West 5 times already. This would be the 6th time. But just look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev had to back down. So that was very embarrassing. Okay, so what happened? There was a coup. He's overthrown. Brezhnev comes to power. All right. Again, you had Gorbachev. Russia's falling apart. I have declassified documents from the Clinton administration. I even published a book, The Plot to Seize Russia. I've got all that information, all right? Russia was invited to join NATO. I've got the declassified documents from the Clinton administration, all right? Now, look at it from the hardline neocon Russian perspective. They were afraid Gorbachev was going to do that. If he did that, to them, that is sending up the white flag and surrendering to their arch enemy, NATO. Okay, so what did they do? They staged a coup against him. That's when Yeltsin stands on the tank, do not shoot on your fellow Russians. The military, listened to him and not the coup directors. So what happened? The coup failed. And what I've been warning about is if you put Putin in the same kind of a position, and you create an embarrassing situation like giving Tomahawk, missiles to this, puppet Zelensky, you're going to cause a real problem. All right. If Putin does not respond, all right, aggressively, he'll be overthrown. And who's coming in? Probably led by Madoff. It's you're looking at the hard line again. And just as we talked about before, these Hamas people have been fed hate Jews from birth. These neocons, the same thing that we have, hate Russians. Well, on their side, they have neocons too. Hate Americans, all right? Hate Europeans, hate NATO. I don't think you can reform any of these groups. So my concern more is that you can end up stupidly creating a situation that leads to another coup in Russia for the third time. And if that happens, this is not going to end pleasantly. Then, quite honestly, if I were them, the canker sore is Kiev. The reason Putin has not really, despite all the propaganda, he did not invade to take Ukraine. He went to take the Donbass, yes. Putin is also a nostalgic historian. And Kiev is where the Russians began. So to him, that would be kind of like us nuking London. You know what I mean? The motherland, or whatever you want to call it. The danger here is the neocons don't have that nostalgia. I think Medvedev, honestly, if he was in charge and Zelensky's out there trying to get tomahawks to destroy Russia, I think he'd nuke it. It would be probably the only reasonable response. But, I mean, they have other weapons that are as powerful as a nuke, that are more conventional, but he could still wipe out Kiev in the blink of an eye. Then the question becomes, what does NATO do? If they say, all right, that's it, whatever, I'm on that side, okay, fine, every capital city is now targeted. What do you want? This is a crazy situation. And it all stems from, like I said, these neocons that from birth they just hate Russians, like Hamas or whatever. And the Russian neocons, they just hate the other side. Then you got the Balkans. Look, the only solution to Ukraine was to break it up. And the neocons wouldn't do it. Because they have been using it. Look, I believe even the RAND Corporation has now come out and said what I've been saying, that nobody really gave two shits if one Ukrainian even is still standing. They don't care. And what I've heard is, what the hell, they were all communists anyhow. All right. Ukraine has been used simply to weaken Russia. So the BS coming out of NATO is that they can wage war against Russia conventionally. Putin will never push the button, and they can. NATO claims they have 3.4 million soldiers compared to Russia's 1.5. Therefore, we can walk in, Putin will fall to his knees and beg for his life. This is what they're telling all these heads of state over there. This is why Trump's comments, they were really sarcastic. Oh, Russia's a paper tiger. That's exactly what the neocons are telling all the heads of state over there. But nothing. We can wipe them out easily. Ukraine can keep all its land and go take more. Really? This was all sarcastic because this is honestly the bullshit being put out by NATO and Europe. So I am looking forward to this debriefing. They know my views, so I'm surprised that I'm being called in to begin with. Just one screaming match, but I don't know. I really don't know.
I can't wait to hear about it. I mean, Martin's already invited, and me to reach out to him to talk next week to see, how that meeting went along. Let me ask you something else too. Domestically, what's going on in Chicago and Portland, and I've talked to people and they've pointed out things to me, and I'll be curious what your thoughts are. You've got local and state level telling the federal government, I don't want you here. I'm not helping. I'll do whatever I can to hinder. Sounds like a civil war to me, Martin. Where do you see that going?
Yeah. Look, the Constitution, look it up, has a supremacy clause. The states basically must yield to the Fed. The fact that they're not doing that, look, I've warned on your show before, the computer also shows we have civil unrest, which can lead to revolution, and we have international war at the same time. And just to clarify, yes, my most concern on the international war is Russia, because the foreign minister also had a meeting with Kalis, the number 2 there in the EU, and she's from Estonia. She's the one who's publicly come out and said Russia's too big and should be broken up. And she's another neocon, and she had the audacity to tell Spain, to tell China that they should tell Russia to get out and cut off all, aid, everything else to them. And I had people that were basically there, so I know what was said. He turned to her and he said, I don't think you understand. All right. We are not prepared to see Russia lose. And then he followed it up and he said, because we know we would be next. They're not stupid. This is not a war against Ukraine. This is a war against NATO. They know that. All right. Civilly, all right. We have, Europe is even worse than the United States, because most of the migrants that went in were Islamic. So you're talking about a completely different culture. All right, that's turned into rapes and burning churches and all kinds of crazy stuff. And many people I speak to in France, they're very concerned that there could be, civil war even in Paris, because if the government goes broke, how you pay these people just to sit home and watch TV? They'll be out on the streets again. In the United States, we're seeing the same thing. The Democrats, look, at the last conference we did, I stood up, everybody thought was, what? I said, the computer says the Democratic Party will split and it's not going to exist as we have known it. And just look at it. It is dividing. You have these people that refuse to admit that why people voted for Trump. I had one friend who was always a diehard Democrat, and when went to go vote, sent me a picture of a laboratory, basically said all genders, and said, "You know who I'm voting for." I don't think they don't get it. We have offices in Thailand. That's the capital of transgender. They call themselves ladyboys. They don't say you have to call me a woman. You can't call your mother a mother. That offends me. Where did all this shit come from?
Well, haven't they? Sounds like you got a party going on in the background, Martin.
Yeah, no, these guys doing some work there.
But that's where I think they were effective in the First Amendment, because people hesitate to even question anything now, and even speak out, or all of this stuff. So I think that they were very effective. And I mean, I know some people think it's being reversed. I don't see that. But I also wonder, with what's happening domestically, with Chicago, Portland as of right now, I mean, how does that play out? Because, I mean, Portland's just a mess. You see these videos every night, and just what a disaster.
Chicago the same way. I mean, it's
and New York, right? Mamdani's about to become the mayor in New York here in a couple of weeks. It seems like that is all but assured at this point.
Well, the computer told me to get the hell out of there and move to Florida. I'm glad I did. Or maybe the last sound place around here right now. But it's just what the Democrats are doing is, if Trump said the sky is blue, no, he's lying. It's red. It doesn't matter. They are taking the opposite position on anything he says. That is so crazy. And I mean, this lockdown stuff. I mean, Obamacare never was affordable to begin with. I mean, I had Blue Cross and Blue Shield when that came out. I got a call from them. We have to cancel your insurance. I said, what's wrong? It doesn't cover everything required by Obamacare. What was required? That I wasn't covered for pregnancy, additional children, whatever. I said, I'm not married, okay? And I don't think I can get pregnant. And they said, it doesn't matter. We have to cancel all these policies because it doesn't meet Obamacare. I had a friend, he was 56, same thing. All right, canceled currency, canceled his health care. And fine, it sounded nice, but they even did that to my mother, who was in her 90s. Oh, I don't think she's going to get pregnant, okay? You get some stupid kid that puts, we have to be fair and make sure everybody's covered for pregnancy and time out and whatever. Put an age limit on it. It was just completely nuts. The joke became like just walking to the club. Hey, girls, line up. I get everybody pregnant because everybody's covered but me. I even went to the dentist and you're no longer covered. I said, but your children are. I said, oh, that's great. I don't have kids. Okay. My kids are covered, but I wasn't. Obamacare was a mess. And they're still out there. Oh, Obamacare, you're going to hurt so many people. Look, everybody that I knew that had it got canceled, and everybody had to move on to something else. Look, nobody reads these bills on Capitol Hill. I did a post when the Patriot Act came out, and I said, look, they changed the $10,000 reporting to $3,000. And I got a call from one congressman says, no, you're wrong. We never approved it. I said, really? Here's the page number. Go take a look at it. Did you read the bill? It's maybe 7 feet tall, but did you read it? And it was dropped to 3,000. This is what goes on. It's every little incident that they do. It's always to get more and more power. I was in a video, in a documentary. It was called "The End of Money," Bitcoin. We even, it wasn't just me. Others, confirmed that we know who created blockchain. It wasn't some Japanese guy. It was the NSA. All this, it's the perfect way to trace money. If I give you a $100 bill, they don't know where it came from. If I gave you 100 Bitcoin, you know where I got it from, and the 10 people behind me. It's a government, it's the government taxation bureau's wet dream. So I'm not fond of that. I still prefer, cash and gold, physical, rather than. Plus, in Florida, we had 2 hurricanes last year. Power grid goes down. How are you going to use Bitcoin? You can't even use a credit card. If you didn't have physical paper money, that's it. You can't even buy, milk.
So I look forward to hearing more from what your meetings in DC, what's going to transpire there. Where can people find you, Martin?
Go to armstrongeconomics.com. We don't sell advertising. You don't have to put in any emails, and you don't get flooded by us. It's just an open forum for basically for the world. And what I have been told by Washington is that maybe that's another reason I get called in. We're not blocked anywhere. You can see it in China. You can see it in Russia. Because everybody knows it's unbiased. It's the computer basically, and we just tell it like it is.
And the conference coming up as well.
Yeah, at the end of November. That should be very interesting this year. It's November 21st through 23rd. It's our 40th anniversary, actually. I don't think I'm going to be doing 10 more of these. I struggle at times just to keep my voice. I asked them in D.C., why does everybody call me all the time? And they said, could you yell at them? That I do.
How can people sign up for it? Is any where they can find information?
On the site. You can get it. You can come physically, meet a bunch of people from around the world, etc. But we stream in, I think, set up for 37 countries. So you can stream it live, go back, look at it, record it, whatever. The Nigel Farage came and spoke in 2019. He says, of course I'm here. He's the alternative to Davos. We have it's probably the largest watched financial event in the world.
Martin, as always, thank you for doing this. I don't think it's going to be that long before we talk again. And, have safe travels. And, I can't wait to hear your summary from the trip.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This will be the first time I'm at a briefing on geopolitics with Russia. So will be interesting.
Mic drop.